Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and welcome to the show, y'all. Look here, in life, you're going to meet all kinds of people if you get around. Whether you get around on the streets or whether you get transferred from prison to prison, right? You're going to meet all different types of people, right? Now, this show is about this guy that I met years ago, but I recently ran back into him, you know what I'm saying, briefly, and it reminded me of some of the things that fascinated me about this guy, right? And I want to share this story with you, right? We're going to call this guy named Jeff, okay? But his name is not Jeff, y'all know that, but we're going to call him Jeff. But years ago, I didn't know him by his name, Jeff. I knew him as the Grim Reaper. That's what they called him. That's what he wanted to be called. That's what he was known as. This was the persona that he had put out there for everybody to know. And let me tell you why. Well, first of all, you know what? Let me go back a little bit. Let me go back because you're not going to get the full context of this story if I don't put it into the proper context for you. You feel what I'm saying? Now, here's the thing. See, Jeff came into the penitentiary. He was a non-violent offender. You understand me? Non-violent offender. He had done some things, but he wasn't the type of dude that would run from a fight. But he had done some things, you know what I'm saying, on the streets that ended up landing him in prison for 12 years. 12 years. On his first bit. But when he came in on his first bit, you know what I'm saying? Let me tell you what he did. He was out there, you know, selling little drugs, but he wasn't really a drug dealer. He was mainly a robber. You know, he's stealing lawnmowers and tractors and stuff like that. And he would steal a car every now and then and get it to the chop shop and all this and that. But he ran up thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of vandalisms and burglaries and all this and that. So when they finally caught up with him, they popped him down and hit him with 12. You know what I'm saying? Multiple sentences and all this and that, right? So he's in here doing a 12-year bit. And he likes to fight. He was good with his hands because when he was growing up, he really wanted to be a boxer. But his family, he told me anyway, family didn't have enough money to send him to get training and all this and that, even though they had a facility in the town that he grew up in where you can go and you can take classes, you know what I'm saying? If you were poor, you can take them on a reduced rate. But he didn't want to stick that out. When he would go there, you know, he couldn't get the private training that others would get because he didn't have the money, but he had them hands. And the coach saw promise in him, and he would work with him when he could and talk to him, try to encourage him, but Jeff didn't like that, so he stopped coming, and he's turned to the streets. And he started stealing, you know, just trying to get a little money extra here and all those different types of things. And it landed him in prison when he was very young. He was right in his early 20s when he ended up in prison with a 12-year bit. But when he was here on that first bit, he learned what he had to learn to navigate the environment to survive it. You got to be good with your hands. If you're not going to hustle, right? If you're not going to hustle, you have no value. You got to find what gives you value in this environment. And see, that's a lot of, you know what I'm saying, that's what a lot of people overlook. And you can do a myriad of different things to get validated in here, right? But let me tell you something. Most of the things that will validate you in this environment are negative, right? So Jeff wanted to nurture this reputation of being a fighter. Somebody that wouldn't run from a fight, did not dare shy away from any situation. So he would pick fights, just agitate people, with just being nasty and ornery. But it was a method to the madness. He wanted the people to see he had these hands, so leave me alone. You know what I'm saying? And when I say knocking people down, knocking people out, he did that. He did that. He hit one dude one time so hard, y'all. Let me tell you something. Before he hit the ground, now dude had on sweatpants, gray sweatpants. I want to paint this picture. He had on gray sweatpants, white t-shirt, you know, icy white t-shirt with some nice black Adidas shoes on. Back in the day when we can get different types of shoes, right? Dude, suave, debonair type of dude, talking crazy to Jeff. Jeff hit him with that two-piece. Ha ha! And before he fell to the ground, you could see this dude pissing on himself. Everybody like, oh, snap. He made him piss on himself. Dude just fell straight down to his knees and then leaned forward and fell flat on the ground, arms down to his side. He just lay there. You can hear him snoring. He gone. His partner then threw some water on him, woke him up, right? That was Jeff's first victim. And let me tell you what he did. Let me tell you what he did. How they started, how his reputation started to build. After he knocked dude out, somebody said, man, you got to put that notch on your belt. You got to put that notch on your belt. Jeff's like, nah, I'm going to tie that on my back. So he took dude's name, and when he got dude's name, he had it tattooed on his back. he had this tattoo artist in the penitentiary draw this book on his back. And when he drew the book on his back, like an open book, like you go to, I hate to use this as an example, like a log book. You got a log book. Some of y'all might have to log into work or whatever the case may be, or when you go to a funeral or situation like that, you log in to let people know that you were there to pay respect. Okay, it was like that on it. He had a log book drawn on his back and lines and everything. You feel me? And he had the name of dude put on that first line, said number 1, period. And then he drew dude's name, had his name tattooed on his back. Yeah. So from that point on, anybody that Jeff knocked out, or some of these, listen to me, some of these situations wasn't just knocked out. See, Jeff was trying to get more and more, aggravated with it, right? So he'll abuse them. You know what I'm saying? I ain't talking about sexual abuse, right? But after they would be knocked out, he'll stomp them. You feel what I'm saying? Pass them out to the booty boys, whatever the case may be. But he was letting people know, if you mess with me, this could happen to you. But every one of his victims, every one of the people that he beat up, knocked out, right? He had their name tatted on his back. And see, when you're doing stuff like that, you never know who's watching. You never know who's watching. And there was this young guy, man, that was in the penitentiary, and he looked at Jeff and he saw him like he was just this bigger than life figure. So he started to respect him, and he started to hang around him, and Jeff saw something in dude that he saw in himself. Somebody in prison just wants to do their time, but trying to find his way. So he took him under his wing. And when Jeff took him up under his wing, nobody messed with him. And then they used to, different guys at the prison, you say, man, why you hanging around the Grim Reaper? They didn't call him Jeff. He didn't want that. And why you hanging around the Grim Reaper? This, and that. So dudes started to personify the similar, characteristics that Jeff did. He was like, man, what you want to do? Just aggressive. Now you look, don't get me wrong. We would always be sitting on the sidelines watching. It was entertainment for us to watch this play out, right? Because he made sure that he didn't cross certain lines. It had even gotten to the point to where it's somebody in the pod, he would go check to make sure they wasn't a gang member. But if it was a gang member, he'd go to the head and say, look, man, I don't want no problem. But if your brother keep on messing with me, I'm going to tat him on my back. You feel what I'm saying? And because they didn't want that type of smoke or that their name or their organization attached to that, because his reputation was spreading not just at the prison that we were at, it was spreading all across the state. There's a dude in the penitentiary, man, that's knocking people out, man, and getting the names of the people he knocked out tatted on his back. Didn't nobody want to be in that club. Because once you put that tattoo on the back, hey, man, ain't no getting away from it. And when I say this dude can fight, he could fight. He could fight. Now, I know you're probably saying, Joe T, why didn't they pop him down? Well, it depends on the situation. You understand what I'm saying? He didn't dismiss people in the way where he was disrespectful towards them. If it came to him, he was more than willing to oblige you. If you started messing with him or crossed his path in some kind of way, he would agitate you to the point to where, yeah, it's time to get him up. And most of the people that he ended up knocking out, they called him out of his name first. They talked disrespectful to him first. But let me get back to his protege, y'all. Let me get back to his protege. His protege was like 3 or 4 years younger than him, right? You know what I'm saying? At this particular time, right? So he's young. He's 18, 19 years old when he came into the system. His protege. Now, his protege is listening to everything he's saying. And Jeff is putting it in his head that you got to be hard. You got to be tough. You can't take nothing from nobody. Nobody. Right? Now, it's one thing that he left out. And you might think that it's important, or you might think it's not important. But in here, most people that act like Jeff, the Grim Reaper, most people have violent charges, right? And they're trying to carve out a space for them to do their time, because they usually have a lot of time. But he had 12, which is a lot of time, but in relation to a life sentence, that ain't nothing. You understand what I'm saying? So he never told his protege that he was a nonviolent offender, because his protege is a nonviolent offender. And he never told his protege that he was a nonviolent offender. It was something that never came up in the conversation. I know you might feel surprised by that, but it didn't come up. Dude just took for granted that he was a violent offender. And he was just happy that somebody liked him. You understand? He was glad that Jeff protected him. So Jeff ended up putting his cellmate out and getting him moved in the cell. He treated him like a little brother. They broke bread together, made meals together, worked out together, played ball together. When they went to visit, happened to be at the same time, his protege introduced Jeff to his family and all this and that, and they thanked him for protecting him and taking him under his wing and all this and that. So Jeff's, you know what I'm saying, his ego became just huge. He relished people calling him the Grim Reaper because it made him have that space that he had wanted so that he could just do his time. But he was turning his protege into a monster. He created this person that was not willing to listen to anybody. Because you got to be careful when you giving somebody a game, right? You got, before you do that, you need to understand something. Any of y'all out there that want to live this crooked life, and I don't recommend you do, because I'm telling you, it's penitentiary, the grave, and the hospital. That's what your future looks like, okay? That's not what you want, especially if you want to live. If you got a wife, kids, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever your situation is, right? You don't want that for them. You don't want it for yourself, but you most definitely don't want that for them. And if you want to live this lifestyle, man, stay away from people. Don't become close to anybody in a relationship because it's unfair to them. If you have kids, it's unfair to them. You understand what I'm saying? Because they need to be able to depend on you being a permanent figure in their life, somebody that can lead them down a positive road, not somebody that's going to be in and out, you know what I'm saying, of the penitentiary, giving them these negative lessons, trying to make yourself look good. But let me get back to the story, right? So here's the thing. Jeff didn't understand that his protege was fragile. His protege was fragile because he had been through a lot of things. He had been abused by his parents and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? And well, one of his parents, and the other parent didn't do anything about it. Didn't do anything about it. Let it happen. And he felt like he didn't have anybody that was going to protect him. And when Jeff protected him, he clung to him. But like I say, he was fragile. So the lessons that Jeff was putting in his mind, he was creating a monster. Somebody that had no limits, no control over how that energy would come out. He was out of control. So listen to me. Now Jeff had 12 years, right? And at this particular time, he had 8 more to go. He was going to go off for parole, but I'm just saying he had 8 more to go. And his protege, he didn't have but like a couple of more to go. He was going to get out before Jeff. So he's learning all of these different things about life, not taking anything from anybody, right? And because his parents were in this box over here of not necessarily being the type of parents that he wanted, they fell into the category of, I'm not taking mess off of them either. I'm not doing that, right? So he goes off for parole. Nobody shows up for his parole here, you know. When he goes in there, Jeff couldn't go in there because they don't allow that. But when he came out of there, Jeff was waiting on him. And when he came out, he spoke to him. And he asked him how did it go, and they had granted him parole. They had granted his protege parole, and he was talking to him in a different way now. You know, at night they would set up and talk, and he was telling him, look, go out there, get your life together, do this, do that. You know, positive stuff, right? But see, wait a minute, hold up. He had already poured all this negative stuff into his head. All of that was in there, right? But now he's telling him, get out there, do the right thing. Because he's hoping, like, he's going to do that you can turn this switch off and on. You know, you got to be this monster in here to survive the environment, right? That's what Jeff thought. But when you get out there, you can turn it off and go on with your life. Don't work like that, y'all. Don't work like that. His protege had 45 days before he was actually released. Took a little longer than normal, but he was released. And he went to a halfway house to stay because he didn't want to go to his parents. Now, the people that you're supposed to share all of that information with and all this stuff, they didn't really pay attention to the things that he said when he talked about how his parents didn't mean anything to him. They had abused him, and one of them had abused him, and the other one let it happen and all this and that, and nobody believed him and all this and that. They didn't really believe it because there was no charges ever filed. Nobody ever done anything about it. So they just pushed past it, and they told him, look, you can't worry about that now. You're grown. You got to go on with your life. And as much as he wanted to, he tried. He just couldn't get it out of his head that they had done this to him. He put both of them in this group. They had done this to him, caused him so much pain and trauma. He couldn't get that out of his head. So one night, when he was supposed to be in the halfway house, lights out, he sneaks out. And when he sneaks out, he goes by his parents' house. And he's got his friend with him, this guy that he had met. This is just after a couple of weeks. This guy that he had met at the halfway house with him. They go by his parents' house. And when they go in, you know, his mother lets him in. She's happy to see him. She's thinking that, you know, bygones are bygones. You know, he's going in, he's talking all lovey-dovey and all this and that. And then his dad comes down the steps and he's triggered. He sees the person that assaulted him, that had abused him in all the ways that a father's not supposed to. And he snapped. And he started screaming and shouting and all this. And his friend that was with him, he was a hothead too. He joined in on it. And before you knew it, they had beaten both of them. I mean, beaten them. And left them laying. Fortunately for his protege, they didn't pass away. But they were in serious condition. After about a week, they are able to talk to the police, all of this and that, and they tell them who it was. And the police go by and they get his protege, they get Jeff's protege and the other guy that was with him, right? And they still had scars on their hands from the beating, how much they had beat them to death. Not to death, but almost to death. They still had scars on their hands. And the evidence was there. The hair and samples and all this and that, because they didn't go over there with the intentions of doing that, but they did it, so they were not prepared to get away with it. And I don't think you can get away with it anyway. But anyway, they locked him up and charged him with aggravated assault and attempted murder. Now, the guy that went with Jeff's protege ended up turning state's evidence and telling them that it was his idea, that it was Jeff's protege's idea, that he just went over there with him, to make sure that, everything was going to be okay, because he knew that how he had talked about him. He said he was angry, but he went over there with the intentions of it. He was trying to make his role in it diminish and make Jeff's protege's role in it, like he was the one to blame. And it worked. And the DA really went after Jeff's protege. Really went after him. And his parents, they were so traumatized by it, they went on with the prosecution and they testified how they were terrified and all this and that. So the young man ended up getting 35 years out of it, combined. 35 years. And they shipped him right back to prison. And they shipped him right back to the prison that Jeff was in. His protege, when he got there, he got him moved in after about a week, got him moved into the cell with him, and they resumed, the relationship that they had as far as being a big brother to him and all of these different types of things. And while Jeff was talking to him, he started to learn that his protege wasn't stable. And he started to blame himself, right? Because one night while they were in the room talking, his protege took out, his emotional discovery, all the stuff from his case, and it had pictures of his parents. And he was looking at those pictures and he was laughing. These pictures had his parents beaten up, black-eyed, bloodied, all of this and that, bruises all over them. And the protege was laughing. And Jeff was looking at him like, this is not normal. And he asked him, he said, man, why is that funny to you? And if you want to know what his protege said, you're going to have to tune in to the next episode, right? Because it's going to get better. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.